"Grandma, my parents are going to take all your money," my granddaughter whispered, her tiny voice trembling as if she had uncovered some dark secret she wasn't supposed to hear. That single sentence hit me harder than 1,000 storms. I forced a gentle smile for her sake, brushing my hand across her soft brown hair, but inside, fury started burning through me like a wildfire no one could control. Claire had no idea what she had just done. She had saved me from a betrayal so cruel it could have destroyed me. I looked into her wide, innocent eyes, those eyes that had only known kindness and love, and for a moment I wished she hadn't told me. Because now I couldn't unhear it. My own son, Daniel, and his wife Hannah, people I had trusted with my entire world, were plotting to throw me away like old furniture and strip me of everything I had worked for. And here I was, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, peeling apples for Claire's snack, while my heart was breaking in silence. It hadn't always been like this. 18 months earlier, when my husband Richard died suddenly of a heart attack, I was so shattered that I could barely make sense of anything. My world collapsed in a single phone call, and the loneliness that followed nearly drowned me. That's when Daniel and Hannah showed up, full of tears and sympathy, promising they would never let me be alone. "Mom, you can't live by yourself anymore," Daniel had said firmly, his arm around me as if he were my protector. "Come stay with us. We'll take care of you." At the time I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I thought it was love, thought it was family. I sold my little 3-bedroom house where Richard and I had spent 32 beautiful years together, the home filled with laughter, memories, and his voice echoing in every corner. Daniel told me the market was hot and I'd get a great price. "It'll be good for everyone, Mom. You'll be close, and we'll never have to worry about you being alone." So, I trusted him. I sold it. And I handed over $600,000 to help them pay debts and secure a better life for their family. At that time, I thought I was doing something good, something Richard would have approved of. But now, sitting at that kitchen table with Claire's little voice still echoing in my head, I realized I had walked straight into a trap I hadn't seen. Claire sat back at the table, her crayons scattered around, drawing a crooked rainbow on her paper. She looked up at me innocently and said, "Grandma, don't be sad. I'll live with you when Mommy and Daddy don't want you anymore." My heart broke into 1,000 pieces at that moment. I leaned forward, kissed her forehead and whispered, "Sweetheart, don't you worry. Grandma is not going anywhere." Inside though, I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for them to push me into some nursing home while they drained every last penny from me. No, they thought I was weak, but they had no idea the storm I was capable of. When Claire went back to coloring, I quietly picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "David Parker?" I said when he answered. His warm, familiar voice came through the line. David and I had gone to school together long ago, and he had been Richard's lawyer for years. "It's Margaret Hayes," I told him firmly, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to see you immediately. Today. 2 o'clock if possible." He hesitated. "Maggie, is everything all right?" I looked at Claire's little hands smudged with blue crayon, completely unaware of the betrayal hanging over us. "Let's just say," I replied with steel in my voice, "it's time some chickens came home to roost." I hung up before the tears could escape, then took a deep breath. I wasn't just some fragile 67-year-old woman who could be pushed around. I could think, I could fight, and I could plan. And starting that very afternoon, I was going to take back everything they thought they could steal from me. By the time 1:30 rolled around, I was dressed neatly, purse in hand, with every important document I owned tucked safely inside. I told Claire we were going for a walk, and she skipped happily beside me, humming without a care in the world. She had no idea she was part of the first step in something that was going to shake her parents' world to the core. As we turned the corner and I saw David waiting for me at the coffee shop, a strange calmness settled over me. The fear that had been eating me alive all morning was gone, replaced by something else, a cold determination. Daniel and Hannah thought I was their helpless mother, easy to manipulate, easy to control. But they were about to learn the hardest lesson of their lives. Never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. David was already standing when I walked into the little corner cafe. He was taller than I remembered. His hair more gray than black now, but his eyes carried the same steady kindness that had once made him the most trusted boy in school. As soon as he saw me holding Claire's hand, his forehead wrinkled with concern. "Maggie, what's going on?" he asked softly, guiding us toward a quiet booth in the back. I forced a smile for Claire. "Sweetheart, why don't you sit here and color while Grandma talks to her friend?" She nodded happily, pulling out her crayons again, her legs swinging off the booth seat. Once she was distracted, I leaned forward and lowered my voice. My hands trembled slightly as I wrapped them around the coffee mug the waitress placed in front of me. "David, they're planning to put me away," I whispered, my voice breaking for the first time that day. "A nursing home. And then they want to take my money." He froze, his jaw tightening. "Daniel? Your own son." The way he said it nearly undid me. I pressed my lips together, willing myself not to cry. "Yes." Claire overheard them. "She came to me this morning." My voice shook as I recounted the little girl's words. "I don't know how long they've been planning it, but I know now what they've been doing these past months. Slowly, carefully, cutting me off from everyone. Making me feel like I can't stand on my own." David reached across the table and took my hand, steady and warm. "You can still stand, Maggie. I promise you that. They don't get the last word here. Tell me exactly what you want." I inhaled deeply. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of power stir inside me. "Everything," I said firmly. "I want a new will, I want the power of attorney revoked, I want every dollar they think belongs to them moved out of their reach. I want to make sure they can't touch me." His expression hardened with determination. "Then that's exactly what we'll do. But we'll need to act fast. When do they get back?" "By 4, I said, glancing at the clock. "We've got just a couple of hours." Claire looked up at me then, her eyes shining. "Grandma, are we going on an adventure?" I smiled faintly, brushing her cheek. "Yes, sweetheart. A very important adventure." By the time we reached David's office, my pulse was racing. The waiting room smelled faintly of old leather and polished wood, a place where serious matters were handled. Claire played quietly with the toy box in the corner while I sat across from David's desk, watching him shuffle papers with brisk precision. As the pen touched the first page, memories came rushing back, painful and vivid. Richard's funeral, where Daniel had wrapped an arm around me and told me he'd take care of me. The way Hannah had suddenly turned warm and kind after years of distant politeness. The day I sold my house, my beautiful house, with its rose bushes Richard planted himself, the porch where we'd spent evenings watching sunsets. I remembered handing Daniel that check, $600,000. I had actually cried with joy, thinking I was giving him a chance to build the life I always wanted for him. But now, in David's office, I finally admitted what I should have seen back then. His eyes had gleamed not with love, but with greed. My hand trembled as I signed document after document, but each stroke of ink felt like I was cutting away the chains they had bound around me. "This revokes their control," David explained calmly, sliding a paper across. "This one secures your accounts in a bank they know nothing about. And this," he paused, smiling faintly, "this is your new will." I held the pen a little tighter. "And the house money I gave them?" I asked quietly. David's expression sharpened. "That's where things get interesting. We can argue it wasn't a gift but contingent on your staying with them. If they break that, they owe you everything back. With interest." For the first time in months I laughed. It wasn't joyful, not yet, but it carried something fierce. Good. Let them choke on the consequences of their own lies. By the time I looked up, it was already 2:45. They would be home in just over an hour, expecting to find me meek and obedient, ready to be hauled off to Shady Oaks or wherever they planned to dump me. Instead, they'd find someone else entirely. Someone they didn't recognize anymore. As I gathered Claire's little hand in mine, she looked up and asked, "Grandma, are we done with the boring grown-up stuff?" I bent down and kissed her forehead. "Almost, sweetheart. Just one more stop." Our last stop was the bank, the very same bank where Richard and I had done business for 40 years. Walking through those familiar glass doors, I felt Richard's presence beside me, almost as if he was whispering, "Don't let them win, Maggie." Claire sat in the children's corner with a lollipop while I sat down across from Janet, the branch manager who had known me for decades. She frowned slightly as I explained what I wanted. "All of it," she repeated, her fingers already tapping the keyboard. "Checking, savings, CDs. You want it all moved to a new account?" "Every last penny," I said firmly. Her brows rose. "That's a substantial amount, Maggie. Are you absolutely sure?" I thought of Daniel's forced smile that morning, Hannah's unusually tight hug, the way they had avoided eye contact as they told me they had errands to run. I thought of Claire's trembling whisper. And I straightened my back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It took nearly an hour. $637,000 transferred into a new account that they would never be able to touch. Every cent Richard and I had scraped together through a lifetime of sacrifice, every hour he had worked overtime, every small luxury I had given up so we could save. All of it, safe now. When Janet finally handed me the confirmation papers, she leaned closer. If you don't mind me asking, why the sudden urgency? I met her eyes and smiled sweetly, though my heart still thundered with rage. Let's just say, some people are about to learn you shouldn't count your chickens before they hatch. By the time Claire and I walked out of the bank, the clock read 3:30. We were heading back to the house. Back to the battlefield. And as I held her little hand, I knew I was ready for whatever storm was about to break. By the time Claire and I stepped back into the house, the late afternoon sun had started to dip, casting a golden glow through the windows. The house looked calm, quiet, almost peaceful. But I knew what kind of storm was waiting to enter those doors in just a few minutes. I sent Claire upstairs to play, then tied an apron around my waist. My hands moved automatically, pulling out the ingredients for their favorite meal. Pot roast with mashed potatoes, gravy, and roasted carrots. I had made it countless times before, but this time it wasn't about feeding them. It was theater. A stage play where every smile, every gesture, every word would matter. As I peeled potatoes, I thought about how carefully they must have rehearsed their plan. I could almost hear Daniel's voice in my head. We'll tell her after dinner. She'll cry, but it won't matter. By tomorrow, she'll be at Shady Oaks, and the paperwork will be ready. And Hannah, always pretending to be sweet, probably nodding along while already picturing herself driving that shiny SUV she had been eyeing for months. They had it all planned. The house, my money, their new lifestyle. They thought it was a done deal. At 3:45, the sound of their car crunching on the driveway made my chest tighten. I wiped my hands on a towel, smoothed my apron, and checked my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked like what they expected me to be. An old woman preparing dinner for her family, soft and harmless. It was perfect. The front door opened. Their voices came in, unusually cheerful, too loud, as if they needed to convince themselves they weren't doing something vile. "Mom, we're home," Daniel called, his tone forced, almost sing-song. "Something smells amazing," Hannah added, walking in with a wide smile that didn't reach her eyes. I turned from the stove and gave them a warm smile. "Just making your favorite," I said sweetly. "Emma's upstairs in her room. How were your errands?" There was a pause. A long one. "Fine," Hannah finally said, looking down at her purse. "Just, running around town." I almost laughed. They were terrible liars. For the next hour, I played the role of the doting mother. I asked about their day, complimented Hannah's new haircut, and served their plates with extra care. Dinner looked beautiful on the table. Perfectly cooked roast, steaming potatoes, bright orange carrots. On the surface, it was a picture of family togetherness. Underneath, it was a battlefield. Daniel chewed slowly, avoiding my eyes. Hannah kept glancing at him, then at me, like a child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Even Claire, chatting happily about school, couldn't cover the thick tension in the room. "This roast is incredible, Mom," Daniel finally said, though he barely touched his plate. "You really outdid yourself." I smiled, keeping my voice soft and calm. "Well, I wanted tonight to be special. You never know when things might change." Hannah nearly choked on her mashed potatoes. "Change? What do you mean?" "Oh, just life in general," I said, sipping my water. "Nothing stays the same forever, does it?" Her face went pale, but she forced a smile. "No, of course not." We made it through dinner, though it felt like hours. Finally, at 7, Daniel cleared his throat and gave Claire a forced smile. "Sweetheart, why don't you go play in your room for a little while? Mommy and Daddy need to talk to Grandma." Claire skipped away, humming, her little footsteps echoing up the stairs. And then the moment came. We moved into the living room. They sat stiffly on the couch, side by side, like two guilty children waiting to be scolded. I sat in my favorite chair by the window, folding my hands in my lap, the very image of calm patience. Daniel looked at me, his hands twisting together nervously. "Mom," he began, "Jessica and I, he stopped, corrected himself. Hannah and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to consider other living arrangements. I tilted my head, my expression innocent, confused. Other arrangements? Do you mean like getting my own apartment? Not exactly, Hannah jumped in, her voice sticky sweet. We were thinking more along the lines of assisted living. You know, somewhere with people your own age, activities, medical staff on hand. It could be really good for you. You mean a nursing home, I said quietly. It's not a nursing home, Daniel blurted quickly, leaning forward. It's a lovely community. We visited today. It's called Shady Oaks. They have a beautiful facility, great programs. I let silence fill the room. It stretched long and heavy until even they couldn't stand it. Finally, I smiled. Well, that's interesting timing. They both froze. What do you mean? Hannah's voice sharpened, a hint of panic slipping through. I reached for my phone, scrolling slowly, deliberately. Because I spent today exploring options too. I pressed one button. David, it's Margaret. Could you come over now? Yes. I think it's time. Daniel's face drained of color. Mom, what are you doing? I looked him straight in the eye. Taking care of business. Just like you always told me to do. The room fell into a silence so thick I could almost hear their hearts pounding. Daniel's hands were gripping his knees, his knuckles white, and Hannah sat rigid, her eyes darting from me to the phone in my hand. For the first time since Richard's funeral, I felt in complete control. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs slowly, my movements calm, deliberate. David will be here in 10 minutes, I said softly, almost like I was talking about the weather. Daniel shot up from the couch, panic flashing in his eyes. Mom, what is this? What are you planning? You're scaring me. I tilted my head, studying him the way a mother studies her child when she realizes he's not as innocent as she once thought. Oh, Daniel, I whispered, my voice trembling with disappointment. You've already scared me enough for a lifetime. Hannah reached out, tugging his sleeve, whispering harshly. Sit down. Don't make it worse. He obeyed, sinking back into the couch, his jaw tight. We sat in that tense stillness until the doorbell rang. The sharp sound made Hannah flinch. My heart raced, but my face stayed calm as I rose and opened the door. David stood there with his briefcase, his expression firm. Good evening, Margaret, he said gently, then nodded at Daniel and Hannah. Daniel. Hannah. I stepped aside and motioned for him to come in. David, why don't you explain to my son and daughter-in-law what we worked on today? He placed the briefcase on the coffee table, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he wanted to give the moment its full weight. Daniel and Hannah looked at him like he was carrying a loaded gun. David adjusted his glasses. Where should I begin? The power of attorney, I suggested with a sweet smile. He nodded. As of this afternoon, Daniel and Hannah Hayes no longer have any legal authority over Margaret Hayes' financial or medical affairs. The power of attorney they once held has been formally revoked. Daniel's mouth fell open. He jumped to his feet again. Planning to use? We weren't planning anything. Sit down, son, I said quietly, my voice sharper this time. We both know that's a lie. Hannah's face had drained of color. Margaret, I don't understand. Why would you do this? We've been helping you. I cut her off, my eyes narrowing. Because children may not always know how closely they're being listened to. And 8-year-olds, Hannah, have better ears than you give them credit for. Her eyes widened. Claire, she whispered. I nodded slowly, savoring the silence that followed. Yes. Claire told me everything. About the nursing home. About the money. About the way you planned to pack me away like yesterday's laundry. Daniel collapsed back onto the couch, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing without sound. David cleared his throat, pulling out another set of papers. Mrs. Hayes has also transferred all of her financial accounts into new institutions. This includes approximately $637,000. Hannah gasped, covering her mouth. You can't do that. That's our what? I interrupted, my voice sharper than it had been all evening. Your money? Did you work for it? Did you save it? Or did Richard and I sacrifice for decades while you waited for us to die so you could swoop in? Her eyes filled with tears, but I had no sympathy left. David continued calmly. Furthermore, the money Margaret provided to you after selling her home was given under the condition she would live here permanently. If that arrangement is no longer honored, she has the right to request repayment in full, plus interest. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Mom, please, he said, his voice shaking. Let's talk about this reasonably. You don't understand. I stood, my body trembling but strong. Don't you dare tell me I don't understand. I understand more than you think. I understand that you've been plotting to declare me incompetent so you could steal what was never yours. I understand that you've used me like free childcare and treated me like a burden while smiling to my face. And I understand that the two of you thought you could outsmart me. But you were wrong. The words came out like fire, each one burning the air between us. Hannah leaned forward, tears spilling now. Margaret, please. Maybe we went about this the wrong way. Maybe we didn't think it through. But we do care about you. We really do. I laughed then, a sound I barely recognized, sharp and bitter. No. You care about my money. You care about my social security checks. You care about free babysitting. But you do not care about me. The room was silent except for Hannah's quiet sobs. David shuffled another folder open, his tone calm but final. One more matter. Mrs. Hayes has also updated her will. The previous version left her estate to Daniel, with provisions for Claire's education. The new version makes some changes. Daniel's head jerked up, his face ashen. What kind of changes? I looked straight at him, my voice cold but steady. The kind where Claire receives everything. Held in trust until she's 25. You and Hannah get nothing. Not one penny. Hannah made a sound between a sob and a scream, pressing her hands to her face. Daniel stared at me like he was looking at a stranger. I leaned forward slightly, my voice quiet but sharp as glass. You were planning to put me away and strip me of my life. Instead, you just lost everything. That's the price of betrayal. The silence in the room felt heavier than bricks. Hannah's hands trembled as she covered her face, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Daniel just sat there, frozen, staring at the carpet like if he looked up, he would see the truth of his own betrayal written on my face. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel, each second dragging the weight of their failure deeper into the room. Finally, Daniel looked up, his eyes red, his voice breaking. Mom, please, we didn't mean for it to be like this. I raised my chin slowly. Didn't mean for what, Daniel? Didn't mean to steal from me while I was still alive? Didn't mean to lie to me while I trusted you with everything? Or didn't mean to use your own daughter as a cover while you plotted behind my back? His lips trembled. We were just trying to protect you. You're 67, Mom. It's not safe for you to live alone. We thought. No, I cut him off, my voice firm. You didn't think about me. You thought about my money. You thought about your debts. You thought about your lifestyle. Don't you dare dress it up as concern. Hannah leaned forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Margaret, listen, maybe we pushed too far, maybe we got carried away, but we love you. We need you. Please don't do this to us. I felt my chest tighten, but not with pity. With anger. Love. I said softly, almost to myself. You call this love? Love does not put a mother in a nursing home behind her back. Love does not steal the savings her husband worked his entire life for. Love does not turn her into an unpaid maid and nanny while shutting her away from her own friends. My voice rose, trembling now, not with weakness but with fury. You don't love me. You love what I give you. You love what I provide. And when you thought I was no longer useful, you decided to throw me away. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, looking more like a desperate boy than a grown man. Mom, please. We can fix this. Don't cut us off. Don't ruin us. We'll do better. I promise. I stood slowly, my knees stiff but strong, and walked to the mantel where Richard's photo sat. I picked it up, looking at his kind smile, his tired but proud eyes. My voice lowered, dangerous, filled with a pain I hadn't let myself feel until now. Your father worked 2 jobs for 30 years so we could save every penny. He went without so you could have a future. He wanted to leave something behind for you. And what did you do? You tried to steal it from me while I was still breathing. Daniel's face crumpled, guilt and panic crashing over him. Mom, stop, please. I turned the photo toward him, my hands shaking but steady enough to hold the truth in place. Do you know what your father would say if he could see you right now? He would say, I should have done this sooner. Hannah let out a sob, covering her face again. David cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. There's one more matter we need to address. I smiled then, a smile that carried no warmth. Ah yes, the final piece. David opened another folder and placed it on the coffee table. This is an eviction notice. Margaret no longer feels safe living here. As there is no formal lease agreement, she is considered a tenant at will. Legally, you have 30 days to make other arrangements. Daniel's voice cracked, a raw mix of disbelief and fear. Eviction? This is our house. I pulled a separate folder from my purse, my movements slow, deliberate. Actually no, Daniel. This is where it gets interesting. Do you remember that $600,000 I gave you? I have every bank record showing the transfer, from my account into yours. The money that paid off your mortgage. The money that cleared your debts. The money that was supposed to guarantee I'd always have a home here. Hannah's face twisted, the realization dawning like a cruel sunrise. You want it back. Every single penny, I said coldly. Plus the rent you should have been paying me these last 18 months. Plus the cost of the babysitting you used me for. Plus compensation for the emotional abuse you've inflicted. Altogether, I paused, letting the silence hang like a noose. Around $700,000. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. We don't have that kind of money. I shrugged, calm, collected. Then you'll have to figure it out. Sell the house. Take second jobs. File for bankruptcy. It makes no difference to me. But you won't be doing it on my back anymore. David snapped his briefcase shut, standing tall. I'll leave you all to process this. Margaret, your new apartment is ready whenever you want to move in. He gave me a nod, then headed for the door. As he opened it, Hannah called out desperately, her voice breaking. What about Claire? You can't just abandon your granddaughter. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, my hand on the railing. I turned slowly, looking her dead in the eye. I'm not abandoning Claire. I'm teaching her the most important lesson she'll ever learn. That when people you love try to cheat you, there are consequences. She'll understand someday. I climbed the stairs, each step steady, leaving Daniel and Hannah to sit in the ruins of the perfect little plan they had built. Tomorrow, I would begin again. Tonight, I would finally sleep in peace. 3 weeks later, I was sitting by the wide window of my new apartment, sipping a hot cup of coffee while looking out at Riverside Park. The view was beautiful. Green trees swaying in the breeze, joggers passing by with headphones in, children laughing as they chased each other. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. The apartment was bright and airy, 2 bedrooms with sunlight spilling across polished wooden floors. It cost me $1,800 a month. Less than a fraction of what I had been pouring into Daniel and Hannah's household. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt like I was living for myself again. But peace never lasted long. My phone sat on the table, buzzing again with Daniel's name flashing across the screen. The 14th call that week. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. A few seconds later, the voicemail notification chimed. With a sigh, I pressed play. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Claire keeps asking where you went, and Hannah's having panic attacks. We can work this out if you'll just be reasonable. Reasonable. That word made me laugh, a bitter sound in the quiet room. Reasonable? This from the man who had planned to declare me incompetent, who had been ready to lock me away while he drained the rest of my life savings. He wanted reason now only because the ground had vanished under his feet. I deleted the message and instead dialed David's number. He answered on the second ring. Margaret. I was just about to call you. How's our lawsuit coming along? I asked, settling deeper into my chair. He exhaled. Slowly. They've hired Martin Burke from Burke & Associates. He's not bad. Sharp, actually. He's arguing that the money you gave them was a gift, not a loan, and that you can't retroactively demand repayment. My jaw tightened. And what did you tell him? That we have 18 months of documented evidence showing they treated you as a tenant, not a family member. We've got bank records, emails, even grocery receipts where you paid for household expenses. The pattern of financial abuse is clear. A small smile tugged at my lips. Good. Let him try. He'll choke on the truth. But then David's tone shifted, more cautious. Maggie, there's something else. Burke filed a motion claiming you're not mentally competent to make these financial decisions. They want a psychological evaluation. The words made my stomach twist. They're still trying to paint me as incompetent? Yes. It's a Hail Mary play. They know they're losing, so they're throwing everything they can to see if something sticks. I set my coffee down, my hand trembling slightly. For a moment, the fear tried to creep back. The fear of being trapped, silenced, dismissed as crazy. But I straightened my back. Let them try. I'll pass their little test. David paused, and I could almost hear the weight in his silence. There's more, Maggie. They've been asking questions about Richard's insurance policy. Specifically, whether you knew about all the beneficiaries. A chill ran through me. What do you mean, all the beneficiaries? I'm not sure yet. Burke hinted there might be irregularities in how the insurance money was distributed. I'm digging into it. After we hung up, I sat staring out the window, my coffee turning cold in my hands. Richard had always handled the insurance and investments. I had trusted him blindly, signing whatever papers he placed in front of me. What if there was something I didn't know? What if Daniel knew something I didn't? The unease pressed heavier with each passing hour. By afternoon, I couldn't stand it anymore. I drove to Claire's school, parking across the street as children spilled out into the playground after dismissal. And then I saw her, small with her little backpack bouncing on her shoulders, her eyes downcast. I got out of the car and called her name softly. Claire. Her head snapped up, and the sadness vanished from her face, replaced with pure joy. She ran to me, arms flung wide, nearly knocking me off balance with the force of her hug. Grandma. I missed you so much. Why did you leave? My chest ached as I held her. Oh, my sweet girl. I had to. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and other grown-ups have to protect themselves. She pulled back, her eyes searching mine. Are you coming home? I shook my head, kissing her forehead. I can't, sweetheart. But maybe you can visit me. My new apartment has a pool. You'd love it. Her eyes lit up. A pool? Really? Really? Ask your parents if you can come this weekend. We'll swim, bake cookies, and do your homework together. She smiled wide, and for a moment, I felt a piece of my heart heal. But then a car pulled into the parking lot. Hannah's car. I knew she had seen me, because my phone started ringing almost immediately. I didn't answer. 2 days later, I arrived early for the psychological evaluation. I wore my best navy blue suit, pearl earrings, and a neat bun. I looked in the mirror before walking in and saw not a frail old woman, but someone who still had fight in her. Dr. Patricia Coleman greeted me with a gentle smile. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Hayes, I want you to know this evaluation was requested by your son's attorney, but I work independently. I'm here to assess your mental state, not to take anyone's side. I appreciate that, Dr. Coleman, I said, sitting down with calm dignity. For 2 hours, she guided me through memory exercises, reasoning tasks, and questions about my recent financial decisions. I answered each honestly, explaining why I had done what I did, showing her step by step the thought process behind every choice. At the end, she smiled faintly. You seem to have very clear recall of events and strong analytical skills. Can you tell me about your relationship with your son and daughter-in-law? I chose my words carefully, steady but honest. They're struggling financially, and I think they saw me not as a person with my own rights, but as a solution to their problems. They wanted my money, not my company. She tilted her head. Do you feel some of your actions might be considered extreme by others? I met her eyes directly, my voice sharp but calm. Dr. Coleman, if someone was planning to steal your life savings and lock you away against your will, what would you consider an appropriate response? She blinked, then nodded, jotting something down. Point taken. That evening, David called again. The evaluation went well, he said. She's recommending no conservatorship. But, Maggie, we have a problem. I found out what Burke was hinting about. My chest tightened. Tell me. David's voice was low, steady. Richard had a second life insurance policy. A big one. $2 million. Purchased 5 years before he died. You weren't the only beneficiary. The room seemed to spin. What do you mean I wasn't the only one? $500,000 went to you. The other $1 million went to someone else. A woman named Linda Morrison. Does that name mean anything to you? The mug slipped from my hands, coffee spilling across the table. My breath caught in my throat. Linda Morrison. Richard's secretary. The pretty blonde from his office who had always been too friendly at company picnics. He hadn't just betrayed me in death. He had betrayed me while he lived. And suddenly, I realized Daniel might not be the only one who had been lying to me all along. I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the spilled coffee spreading across the table like a dark stain. David's words echoed in my mind over and over. Richard had taken out a second insurance policy. $2 million. And half of it had gone to another woman. My voice shook when I finally managed to speak. Linda Morrison. Are you sure? I checked twice, David replied firmly. She received $1 million directly from the insurance company. But here's the troubling part. You were supposed to get the other $1 million. You only ever received $500,000. That means someone intercepted the rest. My hand trembled as I pressed it to my chest. Intercepted. You mean Daniel? David's sigh confirmed it. It looks that way. He handled all the paperwork after Richard's death, didn't he? I closed my eyes, the memory flooding back. Daniel had insisted on managing the insurance after the funeral. I had been too broken to argue, too lost in grief to question anything. He had told me there were taxes, fees, deductions, so much legal talk that I hadn't understood. And I believed him. God help me, I had believed him. So my son, I whispered, my throat tight. My own son stole $500,000 from me while I was grieving my husband. Yes, David said quietly. And it looks like he's been hiding it ever since. If we can prove this, it strengthens our case. It shows a long-term pattern of financial abuse. After the call, I sat in the silence of my apartment, my hands clasped tightly together. My heart was breaking, not just from Richard's betrayal, but from the realization that Daniel had taken advantage of me when I was at my weakest. The two men I had loved most in this world. One had cheated on me, and the other had robbed me. But grief didn't crush me this time. Something else rose in its place. Rage. A clear, cold, sharp rage that gave me strength. The next morning, I searched for Linda Morrison. It wasn't hard to find her. Now married, Linda Morrison Hayes lived in suburban Atlanta with her orthodontist husband and 2 teenage daughters. Her life looked perfect from the outside. A nice house, a smiling family, everything neat and polished. But I needed to hear the truth from her own mouth. I dialed the number, my hand trembling slightly as the phone rang. On the 4th ring, a woman's voice answered. Hello. I swallowed hard. Linda. This is Margaret Hayes. Richard's wife. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought she might hang up. Finally, she spoke, her voice unsteady. Oh my God. Margaret. I wasn't expecting this. How did you even? I'm resourceful when I need to be, I cut in gently, keeping my tone even. We need to talk about Richard's insurance policy. There was a sharp intake of breath. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do, I said firmly. I know about the $2 million policy. I know you received $1 million. What I don't know is what happened to the other half that was meant for me. Her silence was telling. Then she finally whispered, Your son told me you had already received your portion. My grip on the phone tightened. My son told you? Yes, she said softly. He called me after Richard died, to let me know about the funeral. And he mentioned the insurance. He said you were struggling with grief, that you weren't handling the paperwork. He said the company had made a mistake by sending 2 checks. He told me to cash mine and not ask questions. I closed my eyes, fury and heartbreak crashing together. Daniel hadn't just stolen from me. He had lied to Linda as well. He had made her part of the deception. "Linda," I said slowly, "that check you received was supposed to be 500,000. Richard left us each 500,000. Not 1,000,000 each. He changed the beneficiary to provide for both of us equally." Daniel forged the story. Her voice cracked. That's not what he told me. He even showed me paperwork." "Forged paperwork," I interrupted. "Don't you see? He played both of us. You and me." The line went quiet except for her shaky breathing. Finally she whispered, "So he's been lying to me all these years too?" "Yes," I said coldly. "The question is, Linda, what are we going to do about it?" The next day, I waited outside Daniel's office building. When he walked in and saw me sitting in the lobby, his face drained of color. He stopped dead in his tracks, his co-workers brushing past him, giving curious glances. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he stammered. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt, keeping my voice calm. "Hello, Daniel. It's a lovely morning, isn't it? I thought we could have lunch. There's so much to catch up on." He looked around nervously, clearly aware of the eyes watching us. "I'm really busy today." "I insist," I said firmly. "I already made us a reservation at Giovanni's. You remember Giovanni's, don't you? Where you took me to celebrate your promotion last year." His jaw tightened, but he nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But I can't stay long." At Giovanni's, the air was thick with clinking glasses and quiet chatter. The smell of garlic and fresh bread hung in the air. We ordered, making awkward small talk about Claire, about the weather, about nothing at all. I let him settle, let him think he was safe. Then I struck. I leaned forward, smiling sweetly. "I had the most interesting conversation with Linda Morrison yesterday." His fork clattered against the plate, his face shifting from pink to white to gray. I watched him carefully, savoring the moment. Imagine my surprise when she told me you called her after Richard's death. Imagine my bigger surprise when I realized you had stolen $500,000 from me and convinced yourself it was for my own good. Daniel's eyes darted around the restaurant, panic spreading across his face. His voice lowered, trembling. "Mom, please, let me explain." I sat back, folding my arms. "Oh, I'm listening." Daniel's face went through half a dozen shades before finally settling on a pale, ashen gray. He pushed his plate away, his hands trembling as he leaned across the table. His voice came out in a whisper, desperate but low enough that only I could hear. "Mom, it's not what you think." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, Daniel, it's exactly what I think. You stole $500,000 from me. You lied to Linda. You forged stories to cover your theft. And then, after all that, you had the audacity to plan to put me in a home while you enjoyed the spoils." His eyes darted around the restaurant, terrified someone might overhear. "Keep your voice down. Please. Just listen to me for once." I set my fork down carefully, folding my hands in front of me. "Go ahead. Dig yourself deeper. I'm listening." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Dad didn't leave Linda that money by accident. She was pregnant, Mom. With his child." The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched. The restaurant noise faded into a dull hum, the clinking of glasses and chatter blending into nothingness. I stared at him, unable to form words. "She miscarried in the 4th month," he continued, his voice shaky. "But by then, Dad had already changed the beneficiary. He planned to change it back after, but then he had the heart attack. He didn't have time." I sat there in stunned silence, my chest rising and falling unevenly. Richard hadn't just betrayed me with a fling. He had built a secret life behind my back. He had planned for another child. Another family. And Daniel had known. Finally, my voice returned, low and trembling. "How long have you known?" Daniel rubbed his face with both hands, groaning into his palms. "Linda called me after the funeral. She was broken, grieving Dad, grieving the baby. She showed me medical records, insurance paperwork, everything. I knew about the miscarriage. I knew about the policy. And I made a choice." I stared at him, cold fury rushing through me. A choice to steal from me. His eyes flashed. Desperate, defensive. "I didn't steal it for myself. I convinced Linda she deserved the full $1 million after what she went through. And I used your half to pay off our house, to clear our debts, to make sure we had security. Mom, I did it for us, for Claire, for our future. I leaned back, my laughter sharp and hollow. So you robbed me blind and called it charity? Do you hear yourself, Daniel? You think theft turns noble just because you wrapped it in family excuses. His hands shook as he reached for his water, spilling a few drops on the table. You were devastated after Dad died. You could barely stand. You would have wasted that money, or hidden it in savings forever. I made it work. I kept us afloat. Without me, you'd have lost everything. I leaned forward, my voice cutting like a knife. No. Without you, I would still have my dignity. Without you, I would still have my trust. Without you, Daniel, I wouldn't be sitting here realizing that my own son sees me as nothing more than a bank account he can rob at will. His lips trembled. Mom, please. You don't understand. Just then, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and went paler than before. He turned it face down quickly, but not before I saw the name, Jessica. I arched an eyebrow. Your wife. He swallowed. She says David's at the house. With papers. A smile spread across my face, slow and deliberate. Ah, that would be the criminal charges. Insurance fraud. Elder abuse. Theft by deception. David was very thorough. Daniel's eyes widened in horror. Mom, criminal charges? Are you out of your mind? No, I said calmly, my tone icy. I've never been clearer. You forged documents, lied to an insurance company, and stole money from your grieving mother. That's a felony. And when you did it while planning to have me declared incompetent, that's premeditation. He leaned forward desperately, his voice breaking. Please, think about Claire. If I go to prison, what happens to her? I leaned closer too, my voice dropping to a whisper. You should have thought about Claire before you decided to become a criminal. Don't worry about her. She'll be fine. In fact, she'll be getting a much larger inheritance than you ever will. His eyes widened. What do you mean? I smiled coldly. Linda has agreed to give me back the money that belongs to me. All of it. Turns out, she isn't as comfortable with theft as you are. Daniel's face crumpled, the weight of his empire of lies finally crashing down on him. You can't do this to me. I'm your son. I stood, leaving money for my meal on the table, my movements calm, steady. Yes, Daniel. You are my son. And that's what makes this so much worse. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, my head held high, my hands steady on the wheel as I drove away. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Local insurance agent arrested for elder abuse and fraud. Daniel's picture flashed on the TV screen as reporters detailed how he had stolen $500,000 from his own mother while planning to declare her incompetent. My phone rang non-stop all morning. Neighbors, friends, reporters, but I ignored every call. Until one. Grandma. Claire's voice was soft, scared. Mommy's crying, and she won't tell me why Daddy isn't coming home. Are you in trouble too? My throat tightened. No, sweetheart. I'm not in trouble. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, and they have to face the consequences. Her voice trembled. Is Daddy a bad person? I closed my eyes, forcing back tears. No, Claire. Your daddy isn't bad. But he did bad things. And now he has to make them right. That evening, I drove across town to pick up Claire. Hannah had left her at a friend's house before rushing to the jail to see Daniel. When I arrived, Claire was sitting on the porch steps, clutching her stuffed rabbit so tightly it looked like she might squeeze the life out of it. Her little face lit up when she saw me, but her eyes were still swollen from crying. She ran into my arms, and I held her, feeling her small body tremble against mine. Grandma, she whispered, her voice fragile. Are you in trouble too? I knelt down so we were face to face, cupping her cheeks gently. No, baby. I'm not in trouble. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, and then they have to face the consequences. She blinked up at me with wide, searching eyes. Is Daddy a bad person? The question pierced me like a knife. I drew in a shaky breath, choosing my words with care. Your daddy isn't bad, Claire. But he made bad decisions. And when people do wrong, even if they think they have good reasons, they still have to make things right. Her little lip quivered. Are you mad at him? I hugged her tight, burying my face in her soft hair. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. I'm sad that he hurt me. But I will always love him because he gave me you. That night, Hannah came to pick her up. She looked nothing like the polished, confident woman I had known. Her eyes were red, her hair uncombed, her hands shaking as she gripped her car keys. She stood at the door, her voice breaking. Margaret, please. You know Daniel isn't a monster. He's scared. He made mistakes, yes, but can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? I studied her quietly for a long moment. A year ago, I would have broken down, crumbled under the weight of her guilt tripping, believing it was my job to make peace. But not anymore. Jessica, I said gently but firmly, I forgave Daniel the moment I filed those charges. Forgiveness doesn't mean I ignore what he did. It doesn't mean I protect him from consequences. It means I refuse to let his choices poison my future. Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded weakly, as if she understood but couldn't accept it. 3 months later, Daniel stood in front of a judge. His once proud shoulders slumped, his face pale and hollow. To avoid a trial, he pled guilty. The court sentenced him to 18 months in minimum security prison and 5 years probation. But the part that hit hardest wasn't the prison time. It was the restitution order. The judge declared Daniel and Hannah responsible for paying back $700,000. Every penny I had lost, plus interest and legal fees. Hannah's face crumpled in shock. Daniel just closed his eyes, like he had finally accepted defeat. Not long after, they sold the house. The place I had once called home, where I had spent 18 months cooking meals, folding laundry, and raising Claire as if I were their maid, it was gone. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. Hannah found work as a receptionist in a dental office to make ends meet, while juggling the strain of raising Claire alone. It wasn't easy for her, but for the first time, she was standing on her own feet without leaning on me. Through it all, Claire never stopped coming to see me. Every weekend, she would arrive with her little overnight bag, her eyes bright with excitement. We'd swim in the pool at my apartment complex, bake cookies in my small but cozy kitchen, and spread her schoolbooks across my dining table. She would chatter about her friends, her teachers, her favorite cartoons, and I would listen. Truly listen. Something her parents never seemed to have time for. One Saturday as we mixed cookie dough, she looked up at me with flour on her nose and asked, "Grandma, why are you so happy now?" I laughed softly, wiping her nose with a tissue. Because, sweetheart, I finally get to live my own life. Not someone else's version of it. She tilted her head. Does that mean you don't love Mommy and Daddy anymore? My chest tightened, but I answered honestly. I'll always love them. But sometimes loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. Do you understand? She thought about it, then nodded slowly. Like when my friend takes my toy and I say she can still be my friend, but she can't take my toy again? I smiled and kissed her cheek. Exactly like that. Life settled into a rhythm. During the week, I went to community college art classes, joined a local book club, and started volunteering at the animal shelter. For the first time in years, I wasn't living for someone else's approval. I was living for myself. Richard's betrayal still haunted me some nights, when the apartment was too quiet and the memories came creeping back. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had missed the signs. But those nights grew fewer as time passed. And with every weekend Claire spent with me, every cookie we baked, every laugh we shared, the wound healed a little more. The day Daniel was released from prison, my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer. But when I saw his name, something inside me told me I had to. His voice was shaky, almost childlike. Mom. It's me. I know I don't deserve it, but could we try to start over? I stood at the window, watching children playing in the park below, couples walking hand in hand, the world full of life and possibility. For a long moment, I said nothing, just listening to his breathing on the other end. Finally I spoke. Yes, Daniel. But this time, it will be on my terms. Daniel's voice lingered in my ear long after the call ended. I stood by the window, watching the world outside move forward. Children laughing in the park, couples walking hand in hand, old friends chatting on benches. Life had gone on, even while mine had been stuck in betrayal, grief, and manipulation. And now, finally, I had chosen to step back into it. 4 weeks after his release, Daniel called regularly. Sometimes his voice sounded desperate, sometimes quiet, almost broken. He asked about Claire, about my health, about whether I would ever come visit him. I didn't rush to answer him. I wanted him to feel the weight of his choices. Forgiveness was not a gift handed out lightly. It had to be earned. But every time Claire spent the weekend with me, I saw how much she loved both her parents. No matter what they had done, she looked at them with the innocence only a child can hold. She would draw pictures, stick figures of Mommy, Daddy, and Grandma, and tape them proudly to my fridge. One evening, as she sat beside me coloring, she said softly, "Grandma, I don't want you and Daddy to fight anymore. I just want us to be happy." Her words pierced deeper than any lawyer's arguments or judge's ruling ever could. I realized then that my fight wasn't just about punishing Daniel. It was about teaching her something important, about strength, about dignity, about love that isn't blind. So one Sunday, after baking cookies together, I sat Claire on my lap. "Sweetheart," I said, brushing her hair gently, "I want you to always remember something. People can hurt us. Sometimes even the people we love the most. But that doesn't mean we stop living. It means we stand up, we protect ourselves, and we don't let their choices destroy us." She tilted her head, thoughtful. "So, you can still love Daddy, but not let him hurt you anymore?" I smiled through tears. "Exactly, baby. That's the lesson. Love doesn't mean letting someone walk all over you. Real love has boundaries. Real love respects." Weeks turned into months, and slowly, my life blossomed. My art classes became a joy. My hands, once stiff with sorrow, now painted bright colors that reflected the new life I was building. My book club became a circle of friends who welcomed me warmly, reminding me that I was not alone. At the animal shelter, the dogs wagged their tails and the cats purred in my lap, their simple affection healing wounds no human words could. And then came the day I finally agreed to meet Daniel. We sat in the same cafe where I had first called David months earlier, the same booth where I had begun to take back my power. But this time it was different. Daniel sat across from me, shoulders hunched, his eyes filled with regret. "Mom," he said softly, "I don't expect you to forget. I don't even expect you to forgive me fully. But I want to do better. I want to prove to you, and to Claire, that I can be a better man." I studied him carefully, searching for the boy I had raised, the man I had once been proud of. He looked smaller somehow, humbled. For the first time in a long time, I saw honesty in his eyes. I leaned forward, my voice steady but kind. "Daniel, forgiveness isn't about erasing what you did. It's about me choosing not to carry the poison of your choices anymore. I can forgive you. But I will never again give you the power to hurt me the way you did. If you want a second chance, it will be on my terms. And it will take time." He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I understand." As I walked home that evening, I felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had drawn the line. I had claimed my dignity, my independence, and my peace. Looking back on it all, the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, I realized something powerful. Being hurt doesn't make you weak. Trusting the wrong people doesn't make you foolish. What matters is what you do once you see the truth. Do you crumble under it, or do you rise stronger? I chose to rise. And that was the lesson I wanted Claire, and anyone who heard my story, to carry with them. Never let anyone decide your worth for you. Never let betrayal define your future. You can forgive, you can move forward, but you must never surrender your dignity. That night, as I tucked Claire into bed during one of her visits, she grabbed my hand and whispered, "Grandma, you're the bravest person I know." Tears filled my eyes, but I smiled. "No, sweetheart. I just learned the hard way that sometimes you have to be brave for yourself. And when you do, life becomes beautiful again." And with that, I finally knew my story wasn't about loss at all. It was about survival, about justice, about reclaiming the life I had almost let slip away. Some stories end in bitterness. Some in forgiveness. Mine ended with both. Justice served, love redefined, and a new beginning carved from the ruins of betrayal.